each one of you for taking time today to be with us and to answer our questions. We will now move to opening remarks, and Secretary Austin, I will begin with you.
Chair Murray, Vice Chair Collins, members of the committee, thanks for the opportunity to testify about America's strategic competition with the People's Republic of China. I'm glad to be joined by Secretary Blinken and Secretary Raimondo. We rely on each other every day because to compete and succeed, we must use all of the tools of American power. And I'm grateful to Congress for recognizing the urgency of the China challenge and taking bipartisan action to meet it. I'd like to underscore 5 key points today about how the Department of Defense is tackling the security challenge of the PRC in lockstep with our partners across the administration, around the world, and here in Congress. First, we're focusing the entire department on continuing to outpace the PRC. As the President's National Security Strategy notes, the PRC is our only competitor with both the intent and increasingly the capacity to reshape the international system to suit its autocratic preferences. Beijing has increased its bullying and provocations in the Indo-Pacific. It's embarked upon an historic military buildup, including in space and cyberspace. Of course, war is neither imminent nor inevitable, but we must face up to the PRC's growing assertiveness. The department's mission is clear: to deter aggression that threatens our vital national interests. So we're investing more than ever in a formidable, innovative fighting force and a more resilient force posture in the Indo-Pacific. Our budget includes a 40% increase over last year's request for the Pacific Deterrent Initiative to an all-time high of $9.1 billion. We're delivering critical capabilities through more agile approaches to testing and acquisition. And we're developing novel operational concepts for how we employ the joint force. Our National Defense Strategy calls the PRC our pacing challenge, and we chose the word challenge carefully. The United States does not seek confrontation, conflict, or a new Cold War. But America's never shied away from competition, and we're working with both our rivals and our friends to strengthen the guardrails against conflict. To prevail in strategic competition, we must work together as one team. And that's my second point. That demands even closer cooperation with our colleagues at Department of State, Commerce, and elsewhere. We work with the Department of State to help prevent conflicts from breaking out in the first place. We protect the free and open trade lanes that drive the world economy, and we're supporting the Department of Commerce's leading role in implementing the CHIPS and Science Act. And we work closely with Commerce to advance our technological advantages. Third, we're determined to keep the Indo-Pacific free and open. And most countries in the region share a common vision of an open and inclusive Indo-Pacific, free of bullying and coercion. And we're proud to stand together with them. So we'll continue to strengthen the rules-based international order by making clear the folly of aggression and maintaining open lines of communication. Fourth, the whole administration is working to deepen ties with our network of alliances. We're working with our friends around the Indo-Pacific and the world through security cooperation and assistance and through combined operations and exercises. We're also working to develop innovative new capabilities and deepen integrated deterrence. In recent months, that strategy has produced historic results. In Japan, we're forward deploying more resilient and mobile assets, and that includes our plans to deploy the 12th Marine Littoral Regiment. We're pursuing major new force posture initiatives with Australia, and through the historic AUKUS partnership, we'll work with our Australian and British allies to help forge a more stable balance of power in the Indo-Pacific for generations. With our Philippine allies, we will have rotational access to 4 new locations under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. And meanwhile, we're expanding our security cooperation with South Korea, India, Thailand, Singapore, and many others. We're deepening our ties with ASEAN and the Quad, and I'm pleased that the United States will soon provide significant additional security assistance to Taiwan through the Presidential Drawdown Authority that Congress authorized last year. This is part of our long-standing commitment to upholding our obligations under the Taiwan Relations Act and other U.S. policy, and to doing our part to maintain peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. So we need to remain a reliable partner. That brings me to my final point. The best way that Congress can ensure our strategic advantage is with an on-time appropriation that supports the President's budget request. No amount of money can buy back the time that we lose when we're forced to operate under continuing resolutions. And reducing funding to FY22 levels across the government would hamstring our ability to compete even if the Defense Department is exempted from cuts. We succeed as a team, and the Department of Defense succeeds when our interagency partners succeed. We're not just shaping our military, but America's entire strategy to compete and lead. I look forward to working with all of you to continue that proud tradition of U.S. global leadership. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretary Austin. Secretary Blinken.
Chair Murray, Vice Chair Collins, State and Foreign Ops Chair Coons, Ranking Member Graham, distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify before you today. Thank you for bringing us all together. I'm very pleased as well to be here with Secretary Austin, Secretary Raimondo. This administration is committed to leading a bipartisan, whole-of-government China strategy that advances U.S. interests and values and delivers for the American people. And to your point, Chair Murray, I think we do stand at an inflection point. The post-Cold War era is over. There is an intense competition underway to shape what comes next. China represents the most consequential geopolitical challenge that we face today, a country with the intent and increasingly the capability to challenge our vision for a free, open, secure, and prosperous international order. We cannot dictate Beijing's path. We cannot wait for China to change its trajectory, but we can put ourselves in a position of strength to compete intensely, to shape the broader strategic environment around China, and to advance our vision. We do not seek conflict with China or a new Cold War. We're not trying to contain China. And in fact, the United States continues to have a comprehensive trade and investment relationship with China, as do most of our allies and partners. We are, however, resolutely for de-risking and diversifying, not decoupling. That means investing in our own capacities and in a secure, resilient supply chain, pushing for a level playing field for our workers and companies, defending against harmful trade practices, and ensuring that the United States and allied technology is not used against us. We're also committed to working with allies and partners to advance a free and open Indo-Pacific, one that is at peace and grounded in respect for a rules-based international order. When we talk about free and open, what we mean is this. We mean countries being free to choose their own path and their own partners, and that problems will be dealt with openly, not coercively. Rules will be reached transparently and applied fairly. Goods, ideas, and people will flow lawfully and freely across the land, the seas, the skies, and cyberspace. The world is watching how we and Beijing manage this relationship, and it's in our best strategic interest to do so responsibly, in a way that promotes security and prosperity and delivers solutions on shared challenges that matter to the American people and to people around the world. Last year, I had an opportunity to set out the administration's comprehensive PRC strategy to invest, align, and compete. We have made historic investments here at home, including the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, to strengthen our ability to compete. We've aligned our approach with key partners in Europe and Asia and beyond, working methodically to elevate our engagement around the world, and as a result, we have achieved greater convergence on how to deal with the challenges that China poses than ever before. As we compete, we will work to maintain open lines of communication at all levels with the PRC to avoid miscalculation, to prevent competition from veering into conflict. Senior-level engagements over the past few weeks demonstrate that commitment. We will purposely engage China, not as a favor or with engagement as an end in and of itself, but in ways that reflect our values and where we can find areas of cooperation that are in our mutual interest. That's what the world expects of responsible powers. So, we'll push for progress on priorities like the climate crisis, macroeconomic stability, public health. We'll continue to press the need to curb the flow of precursors that exacerbate fentanyl and synthetic opioids and the crisis that they pose. And I very much appreciate the leadership of this committee on this most urgent challenge for the United States. We've heard from members in both parties, on both sides of the Hill, that this unprecedented challenge requires an ambitious resource strategy. We very much agree. That's what the President's proposed FY 2024 State Department budget aims to do, to give us the resources and the agility to advance our strategy. This budget positions the United States to up our game in the Indo-Pacific, the front line of our competition with China. The Indo-Pacific is the most dynamic and fastest growing region in the world. 50% of the world's population, 60% of global GDP, 8 of the top 15 U.S. export markets. It supports 3 million jobs here in the United States, provides about $900 billion in foreign direct investment to our country, and it's driven about 75% of global economic growth over the last 5 years. China, as it happens, invests a full 50% of its assistance and economic and diplomatic resources in the Indo-Pacific. Our budget proposal will allow us to further deepen our diplomatic footprint in the Indo-Pacific, from new missions in the Pacific Islands to a surge of new positions in the region and beyond, including in the areas of greatest contestation with Beijing, like technology, economics, and regional and international organizations. Beijing understands that diplomacy is a critical tool. It's why it's invested heavily in building up its own diplomatic capacity, its own diplomatic reach. And in fact, it's increased its diplomatic budget last year at a faster rate than its military one. And today it has more diplomatic posts around the world than the United States. If we're serious about this competition, we have to demonstrate the same diplomatic seriousness of purpose across the board. Now, we're not demanding that other countries choose between us and China, but rather we aim to offer a more attractive choice. If we can spark a race to the top, so much the better. That would be to everyone's benefit. Our budget sets us up to work with like-minded partners to strengthen our offer and ensure it's relevant and responsive to the needs and aspirations of people around the world. That's why the budget includes $2 billion in new investments in high-quality, sustainable infrastructure, rather than low-quality, opaque, extractive projects that leave countries mired in debt. It would invest $2 billion to bolster Indo-Pacific economies and help the United States compete in areas where the PRC currently dominates and in key priorities for the region, including maritime security, disease surveillance, clean energy, digital technology, undersea communications cables, critical mineral mining. And it contains over $7 billion to extend our economic engagement with the freely associated states via the Compacts of Free Association. That's a critical component of our Indo-Pacific and national security strategy. Altogether, these funding streams ensure that we can meet a generational challenge and demonstrate our long-term commitment on issues that matter most to key countries in the region so that the United States remains the partner of choice. During this decisive decade, our efforts and investments, together with our partners, will determine whether we succeed in advancing our shared affirmative vision for the international system or whether the PRC can erode or replace the global rules and norms that guarantee peace, security, and stability in the world. I'm grateful for this committee's partnership to sustain the resources and policies required by this challenge and very much look forward to taking your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Blinken. Secretary Raimondo.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Murray, Vice Chair Collins, and members of the committee. It is my pleasure to be here with you, with my colleagues, to have this opportunity to discuss President Biden's fiscal year 2024 budget request and our work as a whole-of-government approach to protect America's national and economic security and promote our competitiveness in the face of the very real and increasingly significant challenges from China. As has been said by my colleagues and by Senator Murray and Senator Collins, competing with China requires everyone on the field operating as a whole of government and working in a bipartisan way with Congress. It requires the use of the full extent of our economic, diplomatic, and military tools. And I am so honored to be here with my colleagues in doing this work together. And I look forward to working with you on a bipartisan basis with the Senate as you develop additional legislation building on the CHIPS and Science Act to ensure that we can compete and secure our economic future. The Commerce Department, in partnership with you, is leading the way on a bold domestic agenda, bringing advanced manufacturing and critical industries back to the United States. And at the same time, we have never been more aggressive in using our department's tools to address the threats from China. I want to say that again. This Commerce Department, under President Biden's leadership, has never been more aggressive in using our tools than we have been in the past few years. Today, I'd like to focus on 3 key areas of investment in the President's budget request for the Commerce Department that will strengthen our ability to outcompete China. First, this budget makes strategic investments in innovation, manufacturing, and supply chains. The fact of the matter is, without strong manufacturing and the jobs and innovation and technological leadership that flow from it, we are at a disadvantage in the race to invent and commercialize future technology. The numbers are in my written statement, but the budget supports funding for the National Institute of Standards and Technology, including the Manufacturing Extension Partnership and the International Trade Administration, which will improve American manufacturing capabilities, strengthen our supply chains, and improve our export capacity. Additionally, as has been mentioned today, thanks to the CHIPS and Science Act, the Department is investing over $50 billion to strengthen, revitalize, and reshore domestic semiconductor manufacturing capacity and, critically, research and development. These investments, along with the Department's new Tech Hubs initiative, which just on Friday released its first funding opportunity, will supercharge tech ecosystems all across this country and are absolutely crucial investments in order for us to compete and outcompete China. Second, the budget includes funding for the Bureau of Industry and Security to continue activities that strengthen U.S. national security, foreign policy, and our economy. Through our strategic use of export controls, including unprecedented restrictions imposed last October on China's access to advanced computing chips and semiconductor manufacturing equipment, BIS is preventing the use of U.S. technologies that enable China's military modernization, their human rights abuses, and other activities that are contrary to the United States national security and foreign policy interests. Currently, there are over 2,400 entities on the entity list that face restrictions on export controls. China and Russia represent the top 2. When we find conduct prohibited by our export controls, we take action. And I'm very proud to say that last month, the Commerce Department announced a $300 million civil penalty, the largest ever administrative penalty imposed against an American company for selling hard disk drives to Huawei without a license. Third and finally, the budget enables us to partner with our allies to advance our shared values and shape the strategic environment in which China operates, as Secretary Blinken just said. The budget includes funding for ITA to ensure that U.S. businesses and commercial interests have a robust advocate on foreign trade and market access barriers. This funding will help us counter China's economic coercion and enhance U.S. export competitiveness worldwide. The budget calls for increased funding for U.S. economic engagement in the Indo-Pacific. So this budget request is absolutely critical to our economic and national security. And without this funding, or with substantially reduced funding, make no mistake about it, we're putting both at risk. As has been said by Chair Murray, China is doubling down on its competition with the U.S. and investments, and we cannot afford to slow down now. So I look forward to the discussion we're having today, and I thank you for your time and your effort in this effort.
Thank you very much, Secretary Raimondo. We will now begin a round of 5-minute questions of our witnesses, and I do